Hello, guys, and welcome to my Houston Texans 7 round mock draft. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. We're just going to draft a bunch of O linemen to protect Stroud like he got protected his rookie season when he had minimal pressure and he was able to have a magical season. Of course, that isn't all we're going to draft. But we're probably only going to draft one player from another position because they have a stacked defense. This defense couldn't change, and it'll still be a really good defense. And then on the offense, I mean, maybe you add another wide receiver weapon just in case. You never know if Tank Dell's going to come back and he's going to be worse or he's not going to be the dude, you had before. God forbid, I like Tank Dell. Nico Collins shouldn't have to do it alone, type of thing. Obviously, you bring in Christian Kirk, who I do like that they did that. I think he's going to go and he's going to murder Jacksonville each time he plays them twice a season for as long as he's on this team. I think Jacksonville is weird. But without further ado, we'll look at how much draft capital these guys have after obviously getting a haul for Tunsil. But hey, they need to replace him. And looky here, I guess they only got picks for essentially next year, because they must have used one of them on that trade for Gardner Johnson. But without further ado, let's start this thing. Isn't this nuts? It's probably the shortest needs list you've ever seen. O-line? They don't even mention interior O-line or tackle. They're like, nah, they're a whole O-line, man. Which I agree with. I think it's ridiculous what these guys are doing or what they did. And, that sort of thing. Looking at who's available here, I'm actually going to go and I'm going to say they take Gray Zabel. I don't even care that this guy's available. I don't care that Luther Burden's available. Igbuka's available. You could maybe get a tight end, I guess. Dalton Schultz is obviously good, but you could get a tight end. You only have 3 on the roster in Loveland. But hey, we're not going to be that way. We're going to go and we're going to draft Gray Zabel because I do think that he is impressive. And he's a guy that you can bring in on day one and you plug him in. And he's the best positional and value pick right here. Moving on to this round. One other need I'd like to say that I think that they have is I think that, while Mixon's a good running back and most of his issues that he had last year was because the O-line was just trash from time to time, even in the run game, I think you could go and you could get a halfback. Now, will it be a priority? Damn no. Damn no, it won't. We are going to look at, wide receiver. We're going to look at, some of these other ones. There's a few wide receivers here. But I am firmly believing that this team will double down on O-line in the first 2 rounds. If they don't, then, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Is it too early to draft Ursray, though? So, very good first step for a big guy, which is really, really good. High-waisted build, I think that's... But he's light on his feet. Maybe maybe their O-line guy can work some magic on this dude. Good pass block grade. Also plays left tackle like Zabel. Perhaps, though, you move him around, and that's the thing, because it's went to a pretty big school, not any of the elite schools like we're used to, played against good competition, though. Performed, I guess, pretty average. Obviously, 2 years ago was kind of his best year. He missed a game this last year, but we're going to double down and we're going to go Ursary. Now moving to pick 7 to 9. We still have some wide receivers that I feel like should not be here. I like Kyle Williams. I drafted him, in the last draft to the Broncos. Trey Harris is a guy to me that I think would fit better, as they already have guys who are kind of on the shorter side. And then you look at Trey Harris, who's 6'3", and it's like perhaps he can be your other outside dude that can be really, really good against man coverage, And it's like if you're forcing these teams to play man coverage, then, it's that kind of thing. I'm going to have him draft Trey Harris because I think he brings that much needed size, minus because they brought in Christian Kirk, who's not a big guy, and then Tank Dell, as we all know, is a small guy, type of thing. We moved around 3. Kind of crazy that Kyle Williams is here, but I am not going to have them drafting him. We've got a few linemen right here, within, that sort of thing. Obviously at tackle, it's kind of interesting. This gentleman started at right guard, obviously did not do good there. Savianea. We can look at Wyatt Millum. Very good grades, I notice here. His worst year being a few years ago, obviously with the Mohurries, but no sacks. Obviously went to the Mountaineers, not a huge school, but he also played a lot of left tackle. I don't want every guy we look at to have played left tackle. Well, that's still a need. Perhaps I guess we didn't really look at his size. 6'6", 317. I think that good grip strength. He get in trouble when truly left on an island in pass protection. So, could move inside. So I think that, this is a guy that if he does play inside type of thing, but it's like perhaps, he could play on the right side type of thing. We are going to look at these other guys, though. I believe I've looked at Ratledge before. This guy is a, right guard only sort of player, but is a big mauler size dude with a lot of experience. So pass blocking technique and downhill power in the run game, they could use this guy, and he did play for, a big school. Now looking... What is our next pick? We have pick 80, or we're at 89, and that's 166. I do kind of see Devin Neal here, and I would love to draft him to this team, but I think... So he's building an offensive, he's very good size, still very young, 1 year of starting experience. Flashes and consistency, but the flashes are why we're talking about him. Okay. So he has good arm length and that sort of thing. That looks like a true, like they say, bad prospect. Not a bad, running grade type of thing, which is very good. Obviously gave up a good amount of sacks, though, type of thing. But obviously, compared to how many sacks he's given up, he hasn't given up near as many hurries that I'm like, it's a huge issue. I think you bring this guy in, maybe he is a boomer bust type of dude, but he looks like a guy to me that can come in and can be, potentially the right tackle, or maybe they move him, until he has better consistency with his pass blocking. So now moving up to pick 166 in round 5. We have a couple of wide receivers here. I guess we could look there. I do like Tesla. Not Tesla, the car, the car brand, you guys. Ty Felton, I'm not sure if I know this guy very well, but this guy looks very good. Obviously not a dude who's going to win contested footballs to you. I guess he must get bullied or that sort of thing, out-muscled. But has been consistent and been getting better these last couple of years, or every single year, I guess you could say. Obviously, not a lot of snaps, in his first year type of thing. go into a school that doesn't play, the biggest talent, but did play well against Minnesota, against Michigan, and that sort of thing, but looks like a guy who, disappears from time to time, but, still has pretty good production, type of thing. Would Ty Felton be a guy they go for? It's kind of looking here to me like, and it might be a bold take to say, but you might be willing to draft a linebacker. I know there's no issue with the linebackers they have, but I do think it is kind of a position of need where you brought in a couple of guys. I think these are just depth pieces, but it's like if Toho, gets shown up, because I don't think Aziz El-Shair does. I think you could go Kobe Kane right here and kind of give yourself a third option, for your linebacker room, which is probably the only sort of room that I'm like iffy on, for your defense with the Texans. I'm kind of theorizing because I don't just want to draft all linemen, you guys, and there's obviously need at other positions. We've got a couple halfbacks here, which I do think is a position of need. Raheem Sanders we'll take a look at. Elusive rating very well. Yards after contact pretty good. No pun intended with this. Receiving yards as well. Obviously was injured a year prior. Not crazy yardage type of thing, but it's like enough to where it's like this guy could be your halfback too, behind Mixon type of thing, and given that he's, each year he's been productive with 10 and 11 touchdowns, I think he would be more than serviceable, and give you kind of a guy who it's like is a bit more physical and powerful than Mixon is, despite Mixon obviously be very, very, very good, but to me, I don't think they want to overwork, Joe Mixon. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to draft this gentleman, and we have a pick right afterwards. So looking at what we have available here, we do not really have... I want to see like if we can get a guy who's listed at guard. This guy played at left tackle, and then he switched to left guard last year. Clearly, I don't know if it was because it was for a need type of thing. It looks to be that way, because but the stats are similar. Obviously, a guy who's versatile and a guy who's good is, a good size with, and he was a 4-year starter, for the Beavers at Oregon State. So he obviously has a very good previous 5 season as starter. So it's interesting. It's like his pass grade isn't the best, but he obviously has a very good run talent. I'm going to bring him in just... for the sense that it's like, oh, maybe this guy can improve the run game and we can have a guy. Okay. And they want, they want us to draft Igbuka, which I think is, not bad. Trey Harris, our highest graded player here, a few B pluses and a couple of B minuses and a B, but otherwise I think that this would be a very solid draft where obviously, more than half of your picks are O-line, and I don't know if that's why people aren't getting graded high on the Texans, is because they're not drafting enough O-line, but this is clearly one of the lines in the league that it's like, hasn't really been addressed in the offseason. You could have maybe made a comparison of like the Bears and the Texans, who drafts more linemen, but the Bears have went out in free agency and traded and signed players to their O-line. So it's like, this is arguably the worst O-line in football, going into the draft. So I don't think it's unrealistic to say, hey, we're going to draft 4 O-linemen. And it may not be these guys. Gray Zabel, I feel like, I'm high on him because he played so well last year, and the 2 years prior it was, a mystery, obviously. But it's, I think that Gray Zabel is kind of a guy that it's like, oh, and I mean, he could potentially maybe go higher if there's a team that's like, hey, we see this as a long-term solution to our tackle, because tackles are so damn valuable in the NFL. I think that people are really, they're maybe, it's the fact that he was only really, really good for one season. And it's like he went in and he played for North Dakota State, probably, but it's like, sometimes these guys, they're just, it doesn't matter what competition they're against. They just need the right situation, the right play in the right position, and then they can be amazing. And teams are like, why the heck didn't we draft this guy? And it's like, oh yeah, players drafted before this player that ended up being better than like 15 guys or whatever in someone's future YouTube video about like, oh, why didn't these teams draft this dude, or whatever else. But thinking about this, I want to know what you guys think about this draft. Obviously, it's not crazy exciting. I do think Trey Harris would find himself a home on this team, and, teams would potentially have a rough go at it, if they were running 4-man, wide receiver sets on the Texans, where it's Harris, Christian Kirk, Tank Dell, and then Nico Collins. It just sounds like a nightmare to me, and especially if these O-line additions work out. Like, too many weapons and, too much of that thing. But let me know what you guys think. And, as always, go Pack Go.